Hello and welcome back to Democracy, everybody. Welcome back to Helldivers 2, where today we're going to be ranking all of the assault rifles, and we're going to be ranking them versus each of the different factions. This is all completely my own opinion, and yours will probably differ from this, which is awesome. Anyway, let's begin with our very first assault rifle, which is the AR-23 Liberator. This is the standard Helldivers assault rifle that everybody gets access to right at the very start. And for an overall rating versus each of the factions, I would say this one's probably B tier across the board. It's a perfectly acceptable assault rifle with a lot of customization, which is really nice. This does 80 damage per shot, holds 45 rounds by default, has very little recoil, has a decent rate of fire, and it has light armor pen. Against the bugs, this can kill small bugs very effectively. It can also kill the medium bugs pretty effectively. Against the bots, kind of the same story. If you aim for the weak spots, especially the head, then you can kill the medium bots pretty quickly. Small bots won't be a problem. And against the squids, this one works perfectly fine against the voteless. It works okay against overseer, and it can even work fairly well against the flesh mobs. Against anything bigger than any of these enemies like hulks, chargers, or let's say like harvesters, the Liberator's not really going to be the best there. But that's why we bring other weapons like secondary weapons and special weapons to kind of help round out our build. This rifle deals pretty well with just about everything, and I'm never really disappointed whenever I take the Liberator. It's a fine assault rifle for the most part. For customizations, this one does have quite a lot, and honestly it doesn't really matter too much as to what you want to put on this because it already has solid base stats. So giving it a little bit less recoil or giving it better ergonomics does feel better overall, but it doesn't make it feel like it's massively improved by that like some of the other assault rifles might be. So for the optics, I like going with the Reflex Mark II sight. That one's just my favorite sight. Pick whichever sight you like the best. The iron sights technically give you the best ergonomics, but even with like the 4x scope giving you the least ergonomics, it's not by that much. For an underbarrel attachment, I personally like the angled foregrip, but any of these are fine as well. Like the Liberator doesn't have that much recoil, so the vertical grip doesn't help too much on this. I haven't noticed that much of a difference whenever I've had it on, whenever I've swapped it off. So I just go with the angled one to have a little bit better ergonomics, which I also don't really notice that much either, but it helps out a little bit, I guess. Then for a muzzle attachment, I like the flash hider since this reduces the vertical recoil and the recoil just overall. I do like that one a little bit more than the others, but if you want like the compensator to drop the vertical recoil as low as it can go, that is nice too, even though this one doesn't have very much. And then for a magazine, this one is also really your choice. I like the drum mag, but the extended mag is fine, and the short mag is also fine. There's reasons to take each of them. Overall, the Liberator is a very fine baseline for most weapons, I would say. Our second assault rifle is the Liberator Penetrator. The Liberator Penetrator is in some ways an upgrade to the regular Liberator and in some ways not. They do have very similar stats, although the Penetrator does do less damage per shot coming in at 60, but it does have medium armor pen to sort of offset that. For an overall rating for the Liberator Penetrator, I would say this one is B tier versus the bugs and the squids, but A tier versus the bots. Medium armor pen does help versus the bots quite a bit, and this can help versus certain enemy types. This isn't going to be as good at clearing up smaller enemies, although it is still going to be pretty decent for that, as compared to the regular Liberator, where this one can still kill all the small bugs, squids, bots pretty easily. It can also fight the medium ones much better than like the Liberator can, since you don't need to be aiming for all the weak spots. You can just punch through the armor with this, and it makes it so for fighting bots it's a lot more forgiving rather than aiming for the weak spots of like their backpack or their head. You can just kind of shoot them in the general chest area or head area until they die. Works pretty good there, and it can be better on like the squid missions versus the overseers, but I find it to be less useful versus the voteless hordes and versus the flesh mobs in particular. For customizations, this one also has quite a lot of customizations you could put on it. For me personally, once again, I like going with the Reflex Mark II sight. That was just my favorite sight, but if you want the best ergonomics, you can go with the iron sights. For the underbarrel attachment, I once again like the angled foregrip. This one doesn't have that much recoil. It's not that difficult to control. It has a little bit more than the standard Liberator, but it's still pretty manageable compared to a lot of the other assault rifles. Then for a muzzle attachment, once again, I like the flash hider. If you want the least amount of recoil, though, you can go with the compensator. And then for a magazine, I really like the drum mag with this one because there are times where it is really, really useful to have all the sustained fire with the 60-round magazine. Ergonomics will suffer a little bit from this, but it's not like terrible. It doesn't feel awful going between target and target. Up next, we have the Liberator Concussive. This one is the Stunning Liberator, and this one is weird. I've never really liked the Concussive. I've always found it to be a very awkward weapon. For an overall rating for the Concussive, I would say C tier versus the bugs and the squids, but B tier versus the bots. The stun is a little bit more useful against them, I find, but even against them, I still find it kind of awkward. This does have light armor pen on it rather than medium. If it had medium, I think it would be a little bit better. This one does 65 damage per shot, holds 60 rounds by default since it already has the drum magazine in it, has little recoil, and it has a very slow 400 rounds rate of fire. That is one of the slowest rate of fires in the game out of pretty much any weapon. let alone an automatic weapon. Against the bugs and the squids, this one can clear up small enemies fairly quick. Not as fast as the other assault rifles. I like them better just because of the rate of fire bonus that they have, but this one can still work, especially at a distance. Against the medium enemies, this one can be okay. It's actually not bad for fighting like overseers with, just because you can kind of stun lock them in place and then hope like a teammate can kill them or a guard dog can kill them or something. Against flesh mobs, it's still okay too. On the bot front, this one works towards the small bots, and again the medium bots if you're going for like the weak spots, especially the backpacks, are pretty easy to hit with this. And you can kind of stun lock them there while somebody else takes them out, or again a guard dog or a turret or something takes them out. That can be an okay option. I find this to be more used as like a support weapon, and I'm not the biggest fan of that because it kind of relies on other things helping you out. This one it's always kind of felt awkward to me. For customization, this one does actually start with one of my favorite sights at the 1.5 times tube, so usually I just keep that on there. But you could go with like the reflex or iron sights if you want to have the best ergonomics. For an underbarrel attachment, once again, I like the angled foregrip for this one. It has such a slow rate of fire that it's really easy to keep this on target. You don't really have to adjust all that much, so I don't think the vertical grip is all that necessary, but if you want to go with that, you can. And then for a magazine, this one's really your choice. If you want sustained fire, the drum mag or the extended mag is pretty good, but if you want more of a like run and gun type weapon and you're following a teammate around all the time, the short mags can also be pretty good because they do up your ergonomics significantly. So it is pretty easy to just keep this on target, and usually you don't need more than like the 30 rounds if you have somebody else around like fighting with you. And speaking about awkward weapons, our next one is the AR-32 pacifier. This one is the AK-5 looking gun, which came out with the Force of Law War bond. And this one is also kind of awkward. So this one does even less damage than something like the concussive, but works very similar to the concussive. It does have a higher rate of fire though. So this one does 50 damage per shot, which is pretty low. It's not really that great. It does have medium armor pen though, holds 40 rounds by default, has low recoil, and it also has a 700 round rate of fire, which is a bit better. For an overall rating for the pacifier, I would say this one is probably C tier versus the bugs, and then B tier versus the bots and the squids. I think the medium armor pen does make it a little bit more useful against them, simply because you don't have to be going for the weak spots as much as you would with like the concussive. That being said though, this I find to be just kind of okay against most things. Against the bugs, you can kill the small and the medium bugs okay. It doesn't kill them super fast compared to some of the other assault rifles, which I find a little bit awkward, but the stuns are kind of nice, especially in a team setting. This one was actually bugged for a while too, so it was a bit better than it should have been, simply because stuns were bugged for a time there, where the more people you had, the more higher chance you had of stunning. That's been fixed though, so it doesn't really have that advantage anymore. Against the bots, this one can still take out the medium and the small bots relatively fast, but at the same time, I'd rather have like a DMR, like the counter sniper, for doing sort of the same job, where I can more easily one-hit kill stuff with that. This one I can still kill things with it, but it's going to take more bullets overall. And then against the squids, again, it's okay. You can clear through the voteless, and you can even like kind of stun the flesh mobs, which is nice. It is actually pretty decent against the overseers, mostly because you can just kind of stun lock them and then just keep shooting them until they're dead. So that is kind of a bonus of this, but I still think other assault rifles do that job better. For the customization for this, once again, the sights are your choice. I like the Reflex Mark II. That one's my favorite sight on this one, but it's really your call. For the underbarrel, for this one, I do like the vertical grip. It makes it so it has pretty much no recoil, which is really nice. It's very easy to keep this on target, and it does at least have a higher rate of fire than the other assault rifles we've talked about, so that is kind of an advantage. This still isn't super difficult to keep on target though, so if you wanted more ergonomics, you could go with the angled grip. For the muzzle device, once again, the flash hider I find works just fine for this one, as it just kind of cuts down the recoil altogether. And then going from one extreme to the other, let's go over to the Coyote, the newest assault rifle, and by far the best assault rifle in the game. Like, this one is easily the strongest assault rifle. So for an overall rating for the Coyote, I would just say this one's S tier across the board, because it kind of does every job you would want an assault rifle to do against pretty much all of the factions. Even against bots, this one is still pretty good. I wasn't so sure how good fire would be against them when this first came out, but it's perfectly fine. The Coyote has medium armor pen and incendiary rounds, so it does damage over time, which is really good. This one does 75 damage per shot, which is lower than some of the other assault rifles, but the incendiary kind of makes up for that. Holds 45 rounds by default, which is a lot. Has a decent amount of recoil, but you can kind of lower that, and has a somewhat slower rate of fire at 600. Not the lowest, but not the highest either. This one is just really strong against all of the small enemies, the voteless and the bugs and the bots. This one kills with one shot to any of them, which is really good since the fire ticks over time and you can just kill them with that. You can also spray them down pretty fast with this, so that's not a big deal. And against any of the medium enemies, this one can also just shred them since you already have the medium armor pen and the damage over time. So even on like the bot front, this can kill the bots really fast. Bugs don't like fire, the squids don't like fire either because this can kill the overseers and the flesh mobs really fast. Even against larger enemies, this one can still do a lot. Like against chargers, you can actually kill them fairly fast with the coyote. You can kill hulks with this if you're allowed to get behind them, or even tanks if you really want to. It's not really going to be the best for that. You'd probably want an anti-tank weapon, but you can do it if you need to with the coyote. You can shoot like the stingrays out of the air with this pretty easily too. Like it kind of just does everything that you would want an assault rifle to do. It is by far the best assault rifle in the game. For customizations, I once again like the Mark II reflex sight on here. That one's really cool with this. Although the iron sights are actually pretty good with it too. I don't mind the coyote's iron sights because they're so low and so like narrow that it's really easy to line them up at a distance. Some people really like the 10x sniper scope on this, which is a little bit interesting. That's not bad for the bots, but I prefer the better ergonomics over that. For an underbarrel attachment, I do like the vertical foregrip. That one makes it so the recoil is very, very minimum with this rifle. And then for the muzzle, I really like the compensator just to make it so we have like extremely little recoil with this. With the slow rate of fire, it's also pretty easy to keep on target, but this one just makes it so you can kind of laser beam whatever the heck you want. So that is really cool. Coyote, fantastic weapon, by far the best assault rifle in the game, and one of the strongest guns overall, I would say, just in the game in general. Then up next, we have the MA5C assault rifle. This is the Halo assault rifle, and this one's also pretty good. It's kind of funny that they put this one out, and this one seemed to be pretty nice compared to a lot of the other guns, at least the other assault rifles, and then immediately they put out the Coyote, which was just kind of better than it, but still, this one is decent. So this one is kind of interesting because you can't ADS with it normally. You ADS with it like you do in Halo, so it's kind of off to the side there. This one, for an overall rating, I would say is like A tier versus the bugs, A tier versus the bots, and then like B tier versus the squids. I don't like this one against the squids quite as much. It's still decent for fighting like the overseers, and it can work against like the voteless crowds really well, but I find it a little bit awkward towards some of the other enemies. I mean, it does have medium armor pen, so that is a bonus there, but I do kind of like some of the other medium armor pen assault rifles over it. This one has 80 damage per shot, holds 32 rounds, has pretty low recoil, not the lowest of the assault rifles, but fairly low, and it has the same rate of fire as the Liberator at 640, which is pretty good. It also has medium armor pen. This one is just overall a pretty solid assault rifle. It is a little bit awkward to be aiming for the weak spots entirely since you can't really like ADS with this. Overall, this one is pretty good against everything. It makes for a really good like standard assault rifle. Sadly, there is no customization with this since it is a collab weapon, but it is pretty cool. Let's also talk about the Killzone assault rifle for a second too. I currently don't own the Killzone assault rifle. That's the only weapon I don't own since it was for a limited time and in the Superstore. I didn't happen to snag it then. I have used it a bit, but I've never really thought of it being that crazy in any way, so I'd probably say it's just B tier across the board. It's been a while since I played it though, so this probably isn't very accurate as to how it feels right now, especially towards all the new enemies that have been added since then. But I think it was fine when I tried it, and I don't really have too much else to say. Once again, that one also doesn't have any customization. Moving on to the next one, we have another Liberator. This is the Liberator Carbine. This one is pretty cool. This is pretty much the same as the regular Liberator, just with a much higher rate of fire. So this one, for an overall rating, I would say is A tier versus the bugs, B tier versus the bots, and then A tier versus the squids. This one is really good for clearing up small things. This one also got the nickname of the Smallwort because it does feel very similar to the Stalwart. It actually has a very similar rate of fire to the Stalwart too. This one does 80 damage per shot, holds 45 rounds by default, although the drum mag is really good with this one. Has fairly little recoil, and it has a 920 rate of fire, the highest rate of fire out of any of the assault rifles, which is pretty awesome. This one also has light armor pen, which makes it a little bit awkward towards bigger enemies if you can't hit them in the weak spots. On the bug and the squid front, this one is really good for clearing up the small things. You can clear through all the small bugs and all the voteless swarms really fast. It's really good for that. It's also really good for taking out like the flesh mobs just because you can dump so many bullets into them so fast. That's really good. Against the medium enemies, it's a little bit more difficult to hit, although if you do have all the recoil reduction, you can still aim for the weak spots fairly easily, so this can take down like medium bots and medium bugs pretty fast. but you're still going to have to be aiming for those. So in some situations, it's going to be a little bit awkward. Overall, a very, very fun weapon. The way I like to customize this one, once again for sights, I like that this one starts out with the Mark II reflex sight. I really like that one, so I usually go with that. For a underbarrel, I really like the vertical grip for this. That makes it so it barely has any like muzzle climb whatsoever, and that's sort of the only problem the carbine has, is that it does have an okay amount of muzzle climb if you don't have the vertical grip on it. For a muzzle, once again, I like the flash hider, although the compensator could also work for this. The compensator does make it go a little bit left and right too much for my liking, which is why I go with the flash hider, but it's still fine. And then for a magazine, the drum mag is really good with this one. Since you still have good ergonomics and you have 60 rounds in this, and with the high rate of fire, you can go through the bullets really fast with this assault rifle. I've tried it with like the short mags too, thinking that that might work, but honestly, I don't really like it as much as like the drum mag. The drum mag just feels so much better. Our next assault rifle is the AR-61 Tenderizer. This one is the Starship Trooper looking assault rifle, which this one is pretty cool too. This one has the most amount of damage out of any of the assault rifles, coming in at 105. For a rating for the Tenderizer, I would say this one is probably A tier versus the bugs, A tier versus the bots, and then B tier versus the squids. Still find this one a little bit awkward versus the squids, particularly against the overseers, but it can work really well against the voteless and the flesh mobs. For stats, this one has 105 damage, holds 35 rounds by default. This one has very little recoil, and it has a decent rate of fire, as well as you can adjust the rate of fire. So this one has 600 rate of fire, or you can swap it to 800 rate of fire, which is pretty good. Also has light armor pen. Against the bots, pretty good, because this one is really easy to keep on target, so hitting those weak spots is nice. Probably not as nice as like the medium armor pen ones, where you just have a little bit more leeway there. And then against the squids, very good against the voteless, very good against the flesh mobs, okay against the overseers though. Overseers can tank through this fairly well, and you're gonna have to hit them more than like the medium armor pen assault rifles. So it takes a little bit longer to kill them, but it still can do a pretty good job there. For the customizations, once again, I like the Reflex Mark II sight, but pick whichever sight you like the best. For an underbarrel, I like the vertical grip with this one, especially once you turn the rate of fire up. It has pretty much no recoil. You can hold this right on target very, very easily, and that just feels great. And then for a muzzle attachment, once again, I like the flash hider, but you could go with like the muzzle brake or the compensator. I think all of them are fine with this particular assault rifle, since it doesn't really have too much recoil either way. And then our very last assault rifle is the BR-14 Adjudicator. This one was originally a Marksman Rifle, but then they put it with assault rifles because it kind of functioned the best as an assault rifle. So this one I would say is probably A tier across the board. This one's pretty good, with the exception of it having kind of a small magazine. It would be really cool if this one did have an extended mag. Even just taking it to 45 rounds would feel really good with it, but overall it's still pretty good. This one does 95 damage per shot, does have medium armor pen, holds 30 rounds, has a decent amount of recoil, but you can minimize that, and it also has a slower rate of fire, coming in at 550. This one you can honestly kind of use as a marksman's rifle still. Set it to semi-auto and just fire it one round at a time. That works just fine. Or you can set it to full auto, and if you put some recoil reduction stuff on it, it's still fairly good. Against each of the factions, this one does really well against the small enemies, and it does pretty well against the medium enemies too. This one can particularly be good against like the overseers and the medium bots. I do like fighting them. Medium bugs, this one's also fine for fighting too. For the customizations with this one, I do once again really like the Reflex Mark II sight on here, but if you wanted to go with like a really long range DMR sort of setup, you could go with a 10x sniper scope too. That is an option. For the underbarrel, I would really recommend you go with the vertical foregrip, because this one does have a decent amount of muzzle climb, and that makes it so it's not nearly as bad. That one certainly helps. The angled foregrip I don't think is as good. And then for a muzzle attachment, I really do like the flash hider with this one. I find that to be really good. It's just a good attachment in general for most of the weapons. If you wanted even more recoil reduction though, you could go with the compensator. Our very first Marksman's Rifle is the Amendment. This one comes in the Masters of Ceremony War Bond, and this one is pretty cool. This one is a 3-round burst or semi-automatic rifle. It does also have a progressive trigger, which is pretty cool. I like that they added that in Helldivers, to where you can have this set to 3-round burst, and then if you just tap it, you can still fire it 1 round at a time, or you can hold it down to fire out all 3 rounds. This one does have the highest DPS out of any of the Marksman's Rifles, coming in at 200 damage, and the 3-round burst does have a pretty high rate of fire. For an overall rating for the Amendment, I would say this one's A tier across the board, because it's pretty good against pretty much everything. Like against bugs, this one can take down the small bugs really easily, and has a slow enough rate of fire that you can kind of sweep this across a crowd too and kill more of the small enemies. Kills medium bugs pretty fast, and you can hurt things like chargers with this if you would like. It's not really going to be the best, as well as this one does have a bayonet, so you can stab stuff, and that does make it actually pretty versatile over. Against the bots, this one is still pretty good. You're going to have to be aiming for weak spots more often, so you're going to have to treat this more like an assault rifle, but it does keep up with assault rifles in terms of DPS. It can actually outdamage them, since this can one-shot, headshot medium bots, which is great. You do have to be aiming for the weak spots then, and it is a little bit more rough against like striders. You're going to have to shoot them like in the rockets or shoot their legs to kill them quickly with the amendment, but it still can do that. So it's a little bit more awkward than some of the battle rifles against the bots, but it can still be pretty useful. And against the squids, this one like rips through the voteless pretty fast. You can actually kill flesh mobs really quick with this and overseers really quick with this. The only problem is that it does have light armor pen, so you can't hurt like the bigger things like the harvesters. That may not be such a big deal. For customizations for the amendment, we only have sights. I'd recommend just going with the reflex sight or whatever sight you like the most. Reflex Mark II is my favorite one for this because I'm mostly going to be using this at like close and medium range more as a battle rifle, not so much at long range. If you want to be using it at long range though, you could throw like the 4 or the 10 times scope on here, especially if you're running like peak physique, since those do hurt your ergonomics, but that buffs it up. So if you still want to be using it kind of at close range to move faster, you can do that too. Our next marksman's rifle is the Constitution, the worst rifle in the game, at least described by the community, if you don't count the other weapons that are worse than it. But the Constitution is not really the best gun. It's not the best gun of the marksman's rifles. It's supposed to be a joke weapon, although it can still get the job done, so how much a joke it is, kind of up to interpretation. This one's modeled after the 1903 Springfield, which is a pretty cool bolt-action rifle. It's a Mauser-style rifle. It does have a bayonet on it, which is pretty cool. It was actually the first weapon to have a bayonet on it. This one does 180 damage per shot, holds 5 rounds. You do have to reload this 1 round at a time because they haven't given us stripper clips for it yet. I don't know why. Hopefully they do. I don't think that would make it overpowered. It would just make the reload speed time a little bit more bearable, because this one does have a pretty slow reload if you're not running Siege Ready. Siege Ready I like to take with this, not necessarily for the extra ammo, but just for the faster reload speed. This one does have medium armor pen, and this one has no attachments, so you can't change anything about it, meaning that you're stuck with the aperture sight that it has. I kind of wish you could at least change what type of aperture sight you could have on there. They could still keep it as an aperture, but give us a couple different options. That'd be kind of nice. For an overall rating for the Constitution, I would say this one's C tier against bugs, C tier against squids, and B tier against bots. This one's not bad against bots, honestly. Against bugs, this one is still kind of awkward. You can kill the medium bugs and the small bugs with 1 shot from the rifle, at least some medium bugs. But it's not super consistent, and it can be kind of a pain if you're hitting like leg or body shots and they're not killing. Stabbing does work. This actually works as a pretty decent spear against the bugs, but if you get overwhelmed, then that's not really that great, so it's just kind of okay there. Against bots, you can one-shot, headshot the medium bots, and it does have medium armor pen, so it is more forgiving than something like the Amendment was, although the Amendment can fire a lot faster and it's got a magazine reload, so pros and cons there. And then against squids, it's kind of okay. Again, you can bayonet like the voteless, which is good. You can still kill overseers with this if you hit them twice in the head, I believe. Sadly, you can't one-shot headshot them like some of the other weapons, like the slugger or the dominator that we've talked about, and the next weapon we're going to be talking about. Not really the greatest weapon. This is supposed to be a joke weapon, but like I said, the joke can kind of get the job done on just about any difficulty. This is the only marksman's rifle that I actually have maxed out. None of the other ones I have to 25, but the Constitution was the very first one that I got up to 25. And I think it was the 3rd weapon overall or the 2nd weapon overall that I did actually max out. Up next we have the Deadeye lever action rifle, which is probably my favorite of the marksman's rifles. Yes, I've maxed out the Constitution, but the lever action is the next closest to being maxed out. I absolutely love this rifle. It's really good. It comes with the Borderline Justice Warbond. This one has medium armor pen. It has round reload the same way like the Constitution does. Sadly, they haven't given us any sort of like loading tubes to speed load this thing. That would be really awesome. Has medium armor pen and does 300 damage per shot. Holds 8 rounds as well. And also has a pretty fast rate of fire. This one is really good. For an overall rating, I would say that the Deadeye is probably like B tier against the bugs. Honestly, I'm not a huge fan of this against the bugs. It can kill them very fast, but only holding 8 shots and being able to go through that so quickly since they swarm you so fast does make this pretty awkward, and you're going to have to be reloading it pretty often. It does get a whole lot better if you pair it with something like the Stalwart as a special weapon, because then you're just using it against like the medium and the big bugs, in which case then it's still really good. Against bots and squids, I would say this one's S tier though. This one can kill the bots extremely fast. You can one-shot headshot any of the medium bots. You can also just body tap them and kill them pretty quickly. You can body tap the regular bots and kill them. Even against the big bots, like the Hulks and stuff, if you get behind them, you can kill them pretty fast with the lever action too. And since you have time to reload where they're not usually swarming you unless they're berserkers, but this does kill berserkers pretty fast, then you have plenty of time to like take your shots and just pick off whatever you would like. Against squids, this one's also really good because you can body tap the voteless, which is great. You can actually kill flesh mobs pretty fast with this, and you can one-hit the overseers with this if you hit them in the head. As for customizations for this one, I actually like the 4x scope probably the best on this, the one that it starts out with. I find that that one just kind of works the best because there are times where I want to be using this at kind of long to medium-ish range, but I don't want like the 10x sniper scope on there because I feel like that's a little bit much. I have tried like the iron sights and the reflex sight on this, and I do like those as well. Iron sights aren't really necessary because the ergonomics are already quite good on this. The reflex sight is usually what I'm going for if I'm going to be using this more like close and medium range, but you can still use it at long range pretty effectively too since the bullet just moves so fast. Very cool rifle. I really love the lever action. Then we move on to the R36 Diligence. This one is in the free war bond, and this is going to be the first marksman's rifle that you have access to aside from the Constitution. This one's pretty interesting. This one also has light armor pen, like the amendment. This one does have the lowest amount of damage per shot too at 165, but it does have a fast rate of fire, not as fast as the amendment is, and it does hold more rounds. It holds the most rounds out of any of the rifles, coming in at 25. So that is pretty good. It also has great ergonomics right away too, so this one is more made to be like a battle rifle, and I really do enjoy that. For an overall rating for the Diligence, I would say this one's actually A tier against the bugs, S tier against the bots, and A tier against the squids. This one can be really, really good because there is pretty much no recoil to this, and you can spam it out really fast, and it's really easy to go from target to target. It's also really easy to be targeting those weak spots. So if you are really accurate with this, it can be really, really good. You could argue like the amendment might be better than this if you are also really accurate with that one. And that one also does give you a bayonet. But I find the Diligence just feels really nice to be like moving from target to target and just picking them off quickly. It's also got a really fast reload too, so that's nice. But against the bugs, this one kills small bugs really quickly. It can kill all the medium bugs really quickly. You can even hurt the big bugs with this pretty quickly too, just because of how fast you can spam it out. Against bots, fantastic for just taking your time and picking off headshots. It's really good there. It's really nice for picking off any of them. And even against like the larger bots, as long as they're not focusing you, you can kill them pretty fast with this too, just by attacking their weak spots. You do have to be going for weak spots though. If you find that you're just kind of shooting all over the place, then this one's maybe not going to feel as good. Kind of the same thing goes for squids. Against voteless, this one's really good. Against the flesh mobs, it's really good. Against the overseers, it's fine. You can't one-shot headshot them like you can with the lever action, but you can still kill them pretty fast just with body taps or hitting them multiple times in the head. So for optics, I like having the 1.5 times tube on this, so I can use it more as like a battle rifle. I'm going to be using this more at close range, and it kind of gives me better ergonomics than like the 4x scope. Iron sights give you the best though, so if you're okay with that, but I do like ADSing with this, and the iron sights are kind of awkward, so I don't really use that. As for an underbarrel, I like going with the angled foregrip to just give me better ergonomics. There's not too much recoil involved with this, so I don't really have to worry about that. I just kind of want the best ergonomics that I can have. And then as for a muzzle, I switch between like the flash hider and the muzzle brake pretty often. Just pick whichever one of those you like the best. The compensator's fine too, but honestly, again, the recoil's not that bad with this since you are just tap firing it. It's pretty easy to make up the difference whenever shooting, so I find the flash hider, the muzzle brake a little bit better in that regard. Overall, a very solid weapon, and one of the few weapons we actually get to customize quite a bit. And then our final marksman's rifle is the Diligence Counter Sniper. This one is very similar to the regular Diligence, although it does hold 10 rounds less. You got 15 rounds in this as opposed to the 25 rounds. This one does do more damage per shot, and it does have medium armor pen. This one is kind of like a more forgiving version of the Diligence, although the Diligence can just put out a lot of DPS pretty quickly and have a lot of sustained fire, where this one can still put out a lot of DPS, but it doesn't have nearly as much sustained fire as like the Diligence does. This one, for an overall rating, I'm actually going to give the same rating that I did the Diligence. A tier against the bugs, and A tier against the squids, and then S tier against the bots. This one's pretty good for most enemies, and it is, again, more forgiving than like the Diligence is. This one can take down any of the small bugs really easy, and it can take down the medium bugs really easily. Just aim for headshots and then just kind of spam fire this. The hip fire is actually pretty good from this one too. This one does have worse ergonomics though, so it's not going to be able to transition from target to target as easily. Against bots, this one's fantastic because you can one-shot headshot so many of the medium bots. And then against squids, this one's really good too. You can body tap the voteless. You can headshot the overseers if you'd like. You can kill flesh mobs fairly quick. You can take out like the harvesters if you want with this one too. So that is pretty good. As for the customizations for this one, I usually like going with more of a scope on this one than on the previous one. So the 4x scope would be the best. I don't have that one unlocked currently because I haven't maxed this one out, so usually I just go with the 10x scope that it starts out with. That's pretty good, but I do like the 4x scope on like the lever action, and I don't see why I wouldn't like it on this rifle. And it gives me a little bit better ergonomics. The angled foregrip is pretty good on this because, again, the ergonomics aren't great on this one, so having higher ergonomics is pretty nice. And then for a muzzle attachment, once again, I would go with either the flash hider or with the muzzle brake, whichever one you like more. I like the flash hider a little bit more on this one because, again, it ups the ergonomics slightly. So we have 6 submachine guns to talk about. The very first one is called the MP98 Knight. This is the P90 submachine gun. This one comes with the deluxe edition of the game, so you do need to have that in order to get this one. If you don't have that, then you're just going to have to purchase it. This is like the only gun that you actually have to buy with real money, I would say. All the other weapons in the game you can just earn from getting the war bonds and playing the game normally. This is the one exception to that. And the submachine gun is actually pretty good. For an overall rating for the Knight, I would say this one's A tier across the board because it's generally pretty good against everything, especially once you have attachments to it. If you don't have the attachments, it can be a little bit difficult to control, since this one does have a really high rate of fire. It has a 1300 rate of fire, almost 1400 rate of fire. That is pretty high. This is one-handed. This has light armor pen, does 70 damage a shot, holds 50 rounds by default, although this can have extended mags on it, and it doesn't bounce around too much, but it does have a decent amount of muzzle climb, at least to start out with. Against the bugs, this one is really good for killing all the small bugs very quickly, and it can kill the medium bugs pretty fast as well. You do need to be aiming for weak spots with this, especially towards the bigger bugs, and it's really not the best for that. Something like special weapon would be a whole lot better, but for the crowd control, this one is pretty good. Against bots, this one's actually pretty good too. Once you put some attachments on it, it's very accurate, so it's really easy to hit headshots with this. It's not great at super long range because you can't put a crazy scope on this or anything. It's not going to be as good as like the DMRs generally are, but it's still actually pretty good, and it pairs really well with the ballistic shield if you want to use that. Yeah, if you're fighting medium bots with that, you're going to win like pretty much every single fight, so that's really cool, at least until you run out of bullets. That is kind of another problem with this one. And then against the squids, this one is also pretty good. It can't really do anything towards harvesters, but you can spray down pretty much everything else. This does really well against the voteless hordes. It does actually really well against the flesh mobs too. Against overseers, it's fine as well. Like medium armor pen is a little bit better against them, but for the most part, this one is perfectly fine. For customizations, you have quite a lot with the P90. For optics, I like going with the reflex sight. You could go with whatever sight you like, though. The 1.5x tube you can get really early on, so that's really nice. I personally like the reflex on this, though, if I'm going to be ADSing with it. For an underbarrel, I would recommend the vertical foregrip. That cuts down on the muzzle climb a lot, and it makes it really easy to hold this on target. That is a really big improvement. You could also go with the flashlight vertical grip if you were okay with sparing a little bit of the ergonomics, but you still wanted the flashlight on there. For the muzzle attachment, I really like the flash hider, but the compensator is also really good. Depends on which you like. And then I do really like the extended mag on this. That takes you from 50 rounds to 70 rounds. You have less magazines overall. You have 5 with this, but that's fine, especially if you want to be running like siege ready armor, then you still get more magazines for it. And there are times where those 70 rounds do make a difference, especially with this thing having like almost 1400 rate of fire. You can run through ammo pretty quickly with it. Overall, I really enjoy the Knight. It's probably one of my favorite submachine guns. Up next, we have the ST11 submachine gun. This one is the Bison submachine gun that came with the Killzone collab. So if you're on Xbox, you don't have this, and if you weren't logged in at the time when the Killzone collab was around, then you also don't have this. I don't think you're missing out on too much because this is basically just a weaker version of the P90 in my opinion, where this one has a similar rate of fire, not quite as high, but still pretty high rate of fire at 1000. Still does the same damage as the P90 at 70, holds 48 rounds in it, and doesn't have very much recoil. This one also has light armor pen, and this one is also one-handed. This weapon is kind of interesting. For an overall rating, I would say this one's probably like a B tier across the board. It's just not as good as the P90. I find that one just to be better, especially with the customizations, especially since you can have like the bigger magazine, you can have the flash hider, and you can have like the foregrip as well as you can change out the sights. All of that just kind of makes that weapon a much more tempting option for me than something like the ST11 submachine gun. The Bison itself is not bad though. It still is decent against everything. Against bugs, you can still spray through all the small bugs with no problem. It's okay against the big bugs. On the bot front, it's still kind of the same situation where it's pretty accurate, so it's not too hard to hit bots in the head, especially if you want to be using the ballistic shield in combination with this. You don't really need to be ADSing then, so that's not a big deal. ADSing with this one is a little bit weird just because of the iron sights that it has. They're not bad at all, but there's a lot of flash in front of the gun, so after you fire this a little bit, if you're not sure if you killed whatever you were shooting at, if it wasn't something big, sometimes it can be a little bit distracting because of that. And then against the squids, this one is also fine. It clears through the voteless really quickly. You can clear up flesh mobs with it. You got a decent amount of magazines overall with it. I do like it once again with like siege ready armor. That way I can just reload this faster and it holds more magazines, but it's pretty good with just about any armor. So yeah, this submachine gun is fine. And also, speaking of a fine submachine gun, up next is the Halo submachine gun, the M7S submachine gun. This one I would also say is just B tier across the board. This one comes in with less rate of fire than the Bison, although less recoil as well, so that's kind of cool. Holds the same amount of rounds at 48 and does the same amount of damage. It's also one-handed. It also has light armor pen, but this one is suppressed. And that does somewhat make a difference if you like playing sneaky. That is kind of cool, especially if you want to be taking this with like smokes, you want to run around, you want to spray some things, and then you want to do like the main objectives without anything seeing you. The sights on this are a little bit strange. They're not my favorite. Usually I just fire this from the hip and it's fine. Again, still works really well with the ballistic shield. It's fine towards bugs. You can kill all the small bugs pretty quickly, and even the medium bugs. Not going to do much towards the big ones. Against bots, it's okay because it doesn't bounce around very much. It's pretty easy to hit headshots. And then against squids, it's also just kind of okay where you can clear through the voteless, you can clear through flesh mobs, and it can take down like overseers. Not too much to say here, and once again, this one as well as the Bison cannot be customized because they are collab weapons. So there's not too much to talk about either of these. I think they're both fine weapons and they both fill a pretty similar role, but I would still rather take the P90. I feel like that is just a better option than both of these, with the exception of maybe if you want to be sneaky with like the Halo submachine gun, but that's just my personal opinion. Up next we have the Reprimand. This is the UMP45 looking submachine gun, and this one is pretty cool. This one is the only non-one-handed submachine gun though, so it functions a whole lot more like an assault rifle, and it should really probably be compared to the assault rifles as opposed to the submachine guns, since you are giving up the ability to actually blind fire this or fire it in conjunction with like the ballistic shield. That being said though, the Reprimand is really cool. This is the only submachine gun that I actually have maxed out, and it was the second weapon I actually ever maxed out. So this one has medium armor pen, so it hits a lot harder than the other submachine guns. It has 125 damage per shot. It has a slow rate of fire though, only coming in at about 500 rate of fire, and it does have a small capacity, only coming in at 25. For an overall rating for the Reprimand, I would say this one's probably, once again, probably B tier versus the bugs, B tier versus the squids, but A tier versus the bots. This one is really good. The main problem with this one is just the magazine situation. Holding 25 rounds is pretty awkward, and if we're comparing this to other assault rifles, some other assault rifles kind of do this thing's job better, especially with like the Coyote, but the Coyote does it better than all of the other assault rifles too. This one versus the bugs is pretty good. You can kill the small and the medium bugs really fast with this. It feels really good to fight them, but holding 25 rounds does make it so it's a little bit awkward there. You're gonna have to be reloading this pretty often. Same thing kind of goes with the squids. You can kill pretty much everything on the squid front fairly efficiently with this. It's not bad, but the small magazine does make it a little bit awkward if you start getting swarmed by the voteless. Against bots though, this one's really good since there's not usually a whole lot of bots that swarm you. If they are, they're berserkers, and this one can rip through berserkers pretty fast. And it can kill the medium bots really fast. That is a really good thing about the Reprimand. It can even hurt things like Hulks if they're facing away from you. You can just keep shooting them in the back. That does also work. For the customizations for this one, I really like going once again with the Reflex Mark II on here. It doesn't really have any long range sights on here. The longest it has is the 1.5 times scope. If you want the best ergonomics though, you could go with the iron sights. Those are fine as well, but I actually like using the sights on this one, so that's why I usually go with the M2. The vertical foregrip on this does make it feel much better. This one does have quite a bit of muzzle climb when you're firing it, so if you put the vertical foregrip on there, it cuts it down significantly. And then for a muzzle attachment, I really like going with the compensator on this. It also cuts down the muzzle climb significantly. That's like the one main problem that this one has outside of its magazine capacity. If this one could get like quick detach mags or something like that, or a drum mag, or just an extended mag of something, and it could take it up to like, let's say 40 rounds, or with the faster reload speed being, I don't know, 30-40% faster, this gun would actually be really, really good against everything. It already is pretty good against everything. It's just like having to reload this one pretty often and running through those 25 rounds can be a little bit annoying. So that's why I put it a little bit lower than some of the other weapons. Still probably one of my favorite submachine guns though. Then up next we have the Defender Submachine Gun. This one comes in the free war bond, and this is the only free submachine gun actually. So this one's pretty interesting. It's got a very slow rate of fire for a submachine gun, not quite as slow as the Reprimand, coming in at 520. Does do more damage than some of the other submachine guns that have light armor pen, coming in at 80. This one has always felt kind of weird to me overall as a submachine gun, but I do kind of like it. It's got a slow chugging rate of fire, and it's very easy to keep on target, which makes it so a lot of the customizations feel a little bit redundant on this. Like, it's cool that it gets them, but it doesn't feel like it impacts the Defender all that much. So for an overall rating for the Defender, I would say this one is probably B tier against the bugs and the squids, and A tier against the bots. The slow rate of fire and the decent amount of damage per shot, as well as the very little recoil, makes it pretty good for picking off bots. Against the bugs, this one's still fine. You can spray it out, not really quickly, but at a chugging pace, that clears up the bugs fine. It's not the fastest, but it's okay. Against the bots, once again, the slow chugging rate of fire is actually pretty good for just hitting those headshots. You can pick them off pretty easily, and it works pretty well in conjunction with the ballistic shield. And then against the squids, once again, this one is perfectly fine for killing the voteless, and it's fine for killing the flesh mobs. I don't like it as much for killing the overseers as some of them. Like, I'd much rather have the Reprimand for that, or the P90 for it. But the Defender is fine for this. For customizations, you do have a lot with this one. I personally like going with a 1.5 times tube sight for this one, just so that I can hit bots in the head a little bit easier if I'm going to be ADSing with this, because the rate of fire is pretty low. You could go with the 2 times scope with this too. This thing has amazing ergonomics without any attachments to it, so you don't have to worry about that. You could go with all non-beneficial ergonomic upgrades. I do go with the vertical foregrip for this one, but honestly I don't think it matters. It's really easy to keep the Defender on target, so if you want better ergonomics, go with the angled foregrip. Same thing goes in the muzzle attachment. I like the flash hider on this, but if you want the compensator or the muzzle brake, feel free to go with it. Or if you just want no attachments and to max out the ergonomics, you can also go with that. Maxing out the ergonomics with this is kind of funny. It's not really that different from the basic Defender though, but it is something. And then for the magazine, at first I was really hopeful for like the drum magazine for this, but honestly I don't think it really matters. I've got the short mag on mine right now, but the extended mag that it comes with is fine, and the drum mag is also fine. This doesn't have a really high rate of fire like the P90 does, so having a 75 round capacity drum mag doesn't really matter for this. It's still going to have that slow chugging like grease gun rate of fire, where it's fine, it's okay, but even with like the small mags, you're probably not going to be running through bullets super quickly, so you can just go with a faster reload speed from those if you really want to. And then our very last submachine gun is the Pummeler. This one is like the Liberator Concussive, where it can stagger stuff, which is kind of okay. I'm not the biggest fan of these weapons. I think they're fine, but they don't really do a whole lot for me. This one also does 70 damage, has the slowest rate of fire coming in at 475, so it even has a slower chugging rate of fire. Very little recoil, very easy to hold on target, and it can kind of have a splash effect, at least if you're hitting close enough to enemies to where you can stagger multiple. So that is pretty cool. Still one-handed like all the other submachine guns aside from the Reprimand. For an overall rating for this weapon, personally, I would say this one's probably like C tier versus the bugs and the squids. I'm not a huge fan of it. It can be okay for hitting like the overseers. It's kind of nice there. And then for the bots, I would say it's like B tier. The slow rate of fire and you still being able to hit headshots is kind of nice, and being able to stagger things like the Devastators is pretty good. The main problem I have with this weapon, at least on the bug and the squid front, is that you can get overrun potentially pretty easy. Yes, the stun is kind of nice for this. I find this one to be a little bit better against the medium enemies, the overseers and the medium bugs, where you can kind of stun them, especially if you have teammates that can kind of beat up on them and clear them up a little bit better. For the customization for the Pummeler, this one again is very similar to Defender, where it already has really high ergonomics, so if you want to go with even more ergonomics you can, or if you just want to have like the least amount, go for it. For the sights, I do like the Reflex Mark II once again, but it's really your choice. Pick whichever sight you like the best. For an underbarrel, we don't have as many attachments. I usually just stick with the laser sight and the flashlight. I find that to be pretty good, especially if we end up going into the caves. It's kind of useful there, and we're not really giving up any ergonomics, and we're not really saving that much ergonomics if we go with the no underbarrel. For the muzzle, again, it's your choice. I went with the flash hider on mine. I think that one's fine. It's okay. It's really easy to keep this thing on target even if it doesn't have an attachment, but I do kind of like that one the best. And then once again for the magazine, it's really your choice. Like the extended mag is fine. The short mags I have put on mine just so that I can have the faster reload speed with them. But that's really about it. I'm not really that interested in going with the drum mag because I don't have a really high rate of fire with this weapon. I'm pretty much always going to be able to reload it if I need to. The Punisher is the starting shotgun. You can actually get it in the first part of the first war bond, and I've always liked this gun. I feel like it's a little bit underrated by the community, where this one is actually pretty solid. This is a pump action shotgun, holds 16 rounds, does 405 damage per shot, meaning that it has the second highest damage out of any of the shotguns, not counting the full-size double barrel, but that's a special weapon. Light armor pen, and you can reload this one round at a time. This one is pretty solid on bug missions. It's actually really good early on, so I would say this one's probably an A tier against the bugs, B tier against the bots, and an A tier against the squids. This can one-shot any of the voteless, which is pretty cool. It can bully oppressors on the squid front. Bot front, this one is a little bit awkward. Light armor pen in general is a little bit awkward, I find, against the bots, especially shotgun light armor pen. With other weapons like the Marksmen Rifles, it's not that big of a deal since you can at least aim for weak spots. You can kind of do that with the shotguns too, and if you're at fairly closest range, you're going to get pretty good spread on them. At longer range, it becomes more difficult. This can one-shot any of the small bots, which is nice, just with like body taps. Usually you're just going center of mass with this thing, and like specifically against the bugs, this one's really good. It also has a lot of stagger too, so if you're not outright killing something and you're not hitting armor, then you're probably going to knock it back and it can't immediately rush you either. I like this one probably the best against the bugs personally, because you can just one hit so many of the bugs, and it is pretty good for just flicking and shooting. For customizations for the Punisher though, there's not a whole lot to really talk about. In terms of sights, the only one that's really going to affect anything is like the iron sights, and I would recommend you run that one simply because that gives you better ergonomics. But if you like any of the other sights, run those. Sights are kind of your choice, whatever you like, just pick that one. And then for a muzzle, I actually found no attachment to be kind of the best with the Punisher. Generally, you get pretty good spread even out to long range with it, and when I tried putting like the full choke on this, it was just awkward for me. It basically felt like the Slugger, but if I had light armor pen with slightly more damage, and I don't really want that, I would just rather run the Slugger since I get medium armor pen then. So I found that it was just kind of awkward, and I found that I was missing shots whenever enemies would get up close, which is particularly awkward against the squids and the bugs since they rush you so often. So I found like just no muzzle attachment was kind of the best. Half choke I was okay with, because at least it made it so longer range shots were more efficient, but the Punisher can actually shoot out to fairly long range and do quite a bit of damage anyway, even without any sort of attachments. I haven't tried the duckbill on this, but honestly I don't really like the duckbill in general. Up next we've got the Slugger, and this one is pretty good too. This one is just the Punisher, but it's loaded with slugs. It does 280 damage, has medium armor pen, it's also one reload round at a time, holds 16 rounds. You get this one in the free war bond, and it's really good. Against the bugs and the squids, I would say this one's A tier, and against the bots, I would say this one is S tier. The Slugger is honestly pretty good, and it's kind of gotten better recently, thanks to like the burrowing bugs, particularly the burrowing warriors, since this can one-shot them, which is really nice. Medium armor pen is really good. Against the other bugs, this one is still pretty good too. You can hit like the warriors, you can hit the guards. You can kill all the small bugs pretty easily with this too. It's not as forgiving as the Punisher, since the Punisher has a bit more spread, so it's a little bit easier to hit enemies at closer range. This one does also have travel time as well, so you do have to kind of aim in front of something at least far distances. On the bot front, this one's fantastic. It's pretty much the same as like the Dominator, except for this one is a pump action and you can reload it one round at a time, as opposed to the Dominator, which is basically the same type of gun, but it's semi-auto and you have a magazine reload. You could make an argument for either of those being better than one another. I would say the Dominator's a little bit better, at least on the bot front, just because sometimes it is kind of nice to follow up with rapid shots. But this one is still pretty good. You can one-hit any of the medium bots. You can kill any of the small bots with this, and that's kind of the main thing that you're going to be mostly fighting, and then you probably want something for anti-tank for killing the rest of the bots. And then on the squid front, the Slugger's also pretty good. It's okay for hitting the voteless. It's mostly really good for killing the overseers if you hit him in the head. It can be a little bit awkward to do just because of the travel time, and I do find weapons like the lever action to kind of be a better option for that same role, since they at least have a faster moving bullet. But the Slugger can definitely put up quite a fight there too. Not really the best against the flesh mobs. Like the Punisher is definitely better in that role for fighting those, but it's still okay. And against really any of the Illuminate, you can hurt them, since medium armor pen just works on them. So even if you want to like hit harvesters with this, you can. Oh, and then for customization for the Slugger, I would say don't change anything about it. It already has arguably the best sight on it with the 1.5 times tube. You could put iron sights on this if you want the better ergonomics, but aside from that, it's just sights. You can't change anything else, so just pick whichever one you like the most. Next up is the SG-20 Halt. This one's a pretty cool shotgun. I do like this one quite a bit. This one has light and medium armor pen, but this one has distinctly 2 different tubes, whereas all the Punishers technically have 2 tubes, but they always have the same ammo loaded into them. This one has 1 tube that is strictly flechettes and 1 tube that is strictly flashbangs. So the damage from the flechettes is 385, which is quite good, and it does have medium armor pen on it, and it does have pretty long range as well as pretty tight spread. That does make it pretty strong against most enemies. For an overall rating for the Halt, I would say it's S tier against bugs, A tier against bots, and A tier against squids. It is really good. You could argue it to S tier 2 against the bots because it is very nice. I find that the Slugger's a little bit more consistent for hitting the medium bots, which is why I would knock this one a little bit lower, but it's still really good. Flashbangs are really good with this, especially if you have teammates nearby, because you can stun so many things with this. Like, you can flashbang a charger and stop it just cold and then just walk to the side of it and hit it with the flechettes. That's really cool. You could also flashbang like stalkers. It's really good at flashbanging stalkers. That way they can't really charge you and you can take them out really easily. Flechettes do hurt pretty much all of the bugs. You do only have 8 shots in this one though, effectively, since you're only working with the 1 tube. And you do have to micromanage this by switching back and forth between the flashbangs and the flechettes, which can be sometimes a little bit of a rough deal. Depends on how you really like to use this one. You might just want to primarily use it in one way, especially if you have a bunch of friends around. Maybe just keep it on the flashbangs and then swap to the flechettes every once in a while, or vice versa. Against the bots, this one's pretty good too. It can kill all the small bots and it can kill the medium bots fairly fast. Kills them faster than a lot of the other shotguns do, so that's nice. And then against the squids, this one's also pretty good. You can flashbang like the flesh mob so long as they're not enraged. Then it will stun lock them, and then they're pretty easy to take out. This weapon is still okay at taking them out. It's very similar to like the Punisher, maybe not as fast to kill them as the Punisher, but it's a lot safer than the Punisher. And you can like flashbang the Overseers, which is really nice too, as well as you can kill them fairly fast. And then for customizations for the Halt, once again, I'd recommend that you don't really change anything about it, or you change it over to one of the other sites that you really like. Then we have the SG-451 Cookout. This is the Dragon's Breath Punisher, which is really good. This one is very, very strong against the bugs and against the squids. And for an overall rating, I would say this one's S tier for both bugs and squids, and then probably like C tier versus the bots. I find it pretty awkward against the bots because the fire doesn't help as much as you might think. It's pretty decent against the small bots, but the regular Punisher is too. And it's also really good against like berserkers, but so is the regular Punisher too. So like, it still kind of fills the same role. It's not way great against the medium enemies. It can still burn them, and the damage over time is not bad. But I would much rather have like the Halt or the Slugger to fight the bots with this one, which is why I would say it's lower. Against the bugs and squids though, this one is really strong. It has knockback on it, which is fantastic, especially when you're burning things, and it goes a lot further than like the Incendiary Breaker. I find the Incendiary Breaker to be pretty awkward compared to like the Cookout. I like this one a whole lot more, just because it gives me a whole lot more utility. Like this one can still one-shot stalkers if you hit them in the face. That's really cool. You can one-shot pretty much all the small and medium bugs. To some extent, I think the guards are about the only ones that you really can't. And you gotta, like, kind of go to the side or shoot underneath them since they have the armored front part. But other than that, you're pretty good to go. Like, you can one-shot warriors, you can one-shot any of the small bugs. It's pretty decent at fighting the big bugs, too. Like, this isn't even that bad against, like, chargers. It's not going to kill them super quick, and I think the Halt is a little bit better in that role. But it is very, very nice for the crowd control, and it doesn't really run through ammo super quickly either, which is great. Mostly thinking about like the Incendiary Breaker, that's a little bit awkward. Against the squids, also really good. This one's really good for flesh mobs. It's really good for the voteless hordes, and it's decent enough for taking out like the Overseer, since the burn over time is good. It's not going to do a whole lot to like the Harvesters. They don't really care about this, and that way the Halt or the Slugger would be better. But this one is still pretty solid for fighting off most of the swarms that you're going to be fighting there too. And once again, for customizations, iron sights are probably the best on this one, but really anything, pick whatever you'd like here. This one's very similar to the Punisher. And then we have the M90A shotgun, the Halo shotgun. And this one's pretty cool. I do like this one. This one has 605 damage, the most damage out of any of the shotguns per shot, even more than the double barrel. That's a special weapon. This one does only hold 6 rounds though, which does make it kind of awkward, and it doesn't hold the most extra rounds. This one also only has light armor pen, and it is a round reload the same way the Punisher has been, the same way all the shotguns have been so far. For an overall rating for the Halo shotgun, I would say this one's probably A tier against the bugs, and B tier versus the squids and the bots. I find this one actually pretty decent against the bugs because it does one-shot so many of the bugs. It hits pretty hard, and that is really nice. and there's usually enough time to be running away from the bugs for you to get the round reloads off and then just be picking off the small ones, and you don't really need to be all that accurate. Only a couple of pellets from this need to actually hit where you're aiming. So that's really good. Against the bots, this one is surprisingly decent too. Like, this one can one-shot berserkers surprisingly well if they start rushing you. Can kill all the small bots pretty well. It's okay against the other medium bots. It's not the best against them because it's kind of hard to get like a pellet spread to actually hit them in the head. And against the squids, this one's pretty decent too. You can kill the overseers pretty fast with this. It does one-hit the voteless. I find it to be a little bit more awkward than like the Punisher though against the squids, because the Punisher also one-hits the voteless and also kills the overseers in about the same amount of shots. So I'd rather just have that since I get more overall ammo and I get 16 rounds in the gun as opposed to the just 6 in this shotgun. Now let's move on to the breakers. These are the semi-automatic shotguns, and we have 3 of these. First up, we have just the standard breaker, the SG-225 breaker. This one does 330 damage, which is pretty good, holds 16 rounds by default, and it doesn't have too much recoil. It also has light armor pen. This one's okay. I've never been a huge fan of the breaker, even when like I started playing this game at the very start when it first came out, and people were saying that the breaker was way better than the Punisher. I didn't really feel that way. I felt like the Punisher was just better overall for the same type of role that I wanted a shotgun for. Like, yeah, this one's better for spamming at enemies, but I usually want to hit something and actually kill it, not really just spam into a crowd. The breaker is still okay though. It's by no means a bad weapon. For an overall rating, I would say this one's B tier against the bugs and the bots, and A tier against the squids. I do like this one more against the squids, since it helps me clear up like the flesh mobs and the voteless swarms a lot better. Against bugs, this one's still really good for the small bugs. It's pretty decent for the medium bugs, but I don't like that it doesn't have the stagger like the Punisher does. I find that one to just be a whole lot better, or like the cookout, since that one also has the fire on it. It's not bad though. The spam is pretty decent from it. Bots, it's kind of the same way. Spamming down the medium bots is okay. Killing the light bots is, you know, whatever, and it doesn't really do much to the heavy bots. The main place that this one shines is against the squids. Again, the voteless swarms and the flesh mobs. I think it's pretty good. Against overseers, it's still not bad. It also has a decent amount of customization. However, I find that most of the regular things on it are pretty decent. Silver optics, once again, I'd recommend the iron sights just because it gives you the best ergonomics, which do actually kind of help out the breaker, but any of them are fine depending on what you'd like. For an underbarrel, I like going with the vertical foregrip. That way it's kind of easier to manage the recoil, but if you want better ergonomics, again, you can go with the angled foregrip. I don't think that's necessary with this weapon. For a muzzle, I do like the half choke on this one. The full choke seems like a little bit much again. It seems a little bit like kind of too accurate, and I don't really like that with the light pen shotguns. I kind of want that more with the medium pen shotguns. So usually the half choke kind of cuts it down so it doesn't have as much spread to it, but it's got still a decent amount. And then for a magazine, I found that the extended mag has been the one that I like the most, but that one really feels like it's personal choice. The short mags with like siege ready armor are pretty cool. You get a lot of them and you can actually reload it pretty fast. Drum mag is okay too. I've played around with friends that have had the drum mag on theirs, and it feels fine if you just want to be spamming it at stuff. Then yeah, sure, go for it. Then we have the Breaker Spray and Pray. This one is also in the free war bond, and this one is kind of interesting. This one is a weaker shotgun. This is actually the weakest shotgun per shot, but you do get like the most ammo with it, so you can spam it out the most. And the way this one comes, I really don't like it with like the drum mag and with the duckbill. Once you modify it, though, I do like it a whole lot more. I think that it gets a whole lot better. For rating for the Spray and Pray, I would say this one's probably like A tier against the bugs and the squids, and then C tier against the bots. This one I find pretty awkward against the bots. I don't like it that much. It doesn't do that much damage, and it's not way great against the medium bots. This one does feel like it's more of a spammy weapon. You just want to be using it at like kind of close and medium-ish range, and then just pretty much dumping the entire magazine into whatever's nearby. Against the squids, this one's pretty decent towards like the flesh mobs because you can just spam it into them and hit so many of their heads with it, so that's actually really nice. And it's pretty good against like the voteless swarm. It doesn't do very well against like the overseers. Like, you can spam them down the same way you can anything else. For customizations, once again, I think the iron sights would probably go best with this one. I like the reflex though on here. The reflex that it starts out with is actually pretty good for this type of weapon, because sometimes I will be ADSing with it, but a lot of the time I'm just going to be like kind of hip firing this. Then for an underbarrel attachment, I like the vertical grip once again. It keeps it pretty on target, makes it more spammy. If you want more ergonomics though, the angled foregrip also works. For a muzzle, once again, I think the half choke is the best. I really hate the duck bill that this one starts out with, but at least you can take it off and put no choke on there. That one is a bit better, because again, the spread pattern is just super awkward. Like, it's okay at killing bugs and it's okay at killing the shriekers, but it's just so awkward for fighting everything else. Half choke, I think it has just enough spread for me to where I can still use it pretty well at the distances that I want to use it, Full choke, once again, it gets a little bit too much. Then for magazines, the drum mag is fine, but I really like the short mags with this. The short mags are actually pretty cool. You get 13 rounds in the magazine, and if you run Siege Ready Armor, you get 20 total mags, and it's really fast to reload, so that feels really good. And then our very last shotgun is the Incendiary Breaker. This one used to be arguably one of the best weapons in the game, at least for bugs. It did get nerfed a while back, but it's still pretty strong. For the Incendiary Breaker, I'd say this one's A tier versus the bugs, C tier versus the bots, and then B tier versus the squids, which is a little bit strange because before the weapon upgrade system came out, I would have much rather had this versus the squids in particular than like the regular breaker, but not so much now, since like the main problem with this one is the ammo. You don't get a whole lot of ammo, and that is what they nerfed. So this one does 240 damage a shot, does have incendiary, and does have light armor pen on it. That does make it pretty good for fighting the bugs, because there is going to be a lot of bugs, there's going to be a lot of small and medium bugs, and if you spray this just into the crowd, you're going to kill a lot of them just thanks to the fire. That's still where this one's the best. It's also pretty decent against like the voteless hordes. It's okay against the flesh mobs. I actually like the spray and pray, the regular one, over this for fighting like flesh mobs, and I find that it doesn't work very well against like the overseers. It's okay on bot missions. This one is not really the greatest. It's okay at killing medium things, it's good at killing small stuff, but so are all the other shotguns, and it doesn't do anything to the big guys. And then for customizations, once again for sights, iron sights are probably going to be the best for this. Yeah, you're probably not going to be like ADSing with it, so whatever sights you like the most. For the underbarrel, I do like just having no underbarrel on this. For a muzzle, this one I like no muzzle on because the choke and the half choke I just don't think is really necessary. I kind of want more spread with this. I've tried other friends breaker incendiaries with the duckbill on it, and it's still okay for bug missions. It feels pretty awkward on the other mission types, but it's okay on them, so if you like that, then go for it. And then for magazine, I think this one's really your choice. I like the drum mag on it, since I'm most likely just going to be dumping this entirely into a crowd and then swapping to my secondary to actually pick off things when they get close. I'm mostly going to be kind of pairing it with that. That's also why I'm not really going to be rating any of these weapons as like D tier or below, because there is so many options you can take in Helldivers that really taking like a secondary or throwables or especially special weapons, you can kind of make up for anything's weaknesses. So like, I don't think anything here deserves to be like lower than C tier, even when they're maybe not the best. Like I don't really like the shotguns against the bots overall, unless it's like the Slugger or the Halt. First up, we have the Plasma Punisher. This is part of the Punisher family, sort of. It's the least Punisher-like out of all of them. This is a pump action plasma launcher. It's almost like a grenade launcher, and this one can be pretty cool. It's definitely a different weapon. I don't see too many people using the Plasma Punisher too often, but I do think that it's actually pretty decent. For an overall rating for the Plasma Punisher, I would say that this one's probably A tier versus the bugs and the bots, but probably B tier versus the squids. I find this one a little bit awkward against the squids. It's actually really good at fighting the flesh mobs over there. For the bugs, it's pretty decent for the crowds unless they get too close to you, and that makes it a little bit awkward, but that's just sort of the plasma and explosive weapons in general that are a little bit awkward. Then you're not likely going to be able to kill yourself quickly with the Punisher Plasma, but it can happen. You can also hurt just about any of the bugs with this. Even the bigger bugs like Titans and Chargers, you can still hurt with this, and this does have a high amount of stagger on it, as well as it's actually pretty good against pretty much any of the medium bugs or the small bugs if they keep their distance. So if you can just keep shooting this at them, that's pretty good. This does have medium armor pen, and it does have explosive rounds on it, which is good. Against bots, it's actually really strong, especially the medium bots. It can kill the small bots really easy. You just have to splash this near them or hit them directly with it. With the medium bots, since they're such a big wide target, it's really easy to hit this, and it's really easy to splash it to multiple of them. So you can kill things like Devastators very, very easily. You can even kill like Berserkers pretty easily with it. Again, it's a little bit awkward if they do end up getting close to you, but that's still okay. And it also takes out Striders fairly quickly too, which is nice. Against the bigger bots, this one probably won't hurt them too much unless you're allowed to attack the weak spots, in which case then it's okay, similar to like the Slugger. And then against the squids, this one I find to just be a little bit awkward just because the voteless hordes can sometimes tank through this even if you're splashing damage to them, and sometimes you can just kind of get overwhelmed by them. And since they're a little bit higher up, it's a little bit more difficult to kind of lob this over them to splash it behind them, I find, compared to the bugs. It does kill flesh mobs pretty quickly, though. That is something that's really good, and you can bully overseers with this. You can even kill harvesters with this, which is good, but I find it's kind of awkward compared to other medium armor weapons for that same job, mostly just because you sort of have to arc this into the enemies. Overall, a pretty decent weapon though. For the customizations that I'd recommend for the Plasma Punisher, I'd pretty much just say go with the iron sights if you can. Other than that, just pick whatever sights you'd like. That's the only thing that it has, and the iron sights just give you the best ergonomics, as well as I don't find myself like ADSing with this one very much. Most of the time I'm just sort of like hip firing this, similar to the special weapon grenade launcher. And if you get used to that, then you don't really need to use the iron sights, but if you want to use the sights, then pick whichever sight you would like the best. Up next is, in my opinion, probably the worst rifle that's actually in the game. This is the Plas 39 Accelerator Rifle. Now, this one came with the Killzone collab, and it's only with the Killzone collab, so if you're on Xbox, you don't have access to this one. But I don't think you're missing out on a whole lot from this, because this is a pretty awkward weapon, and I've never played the Killzone game, so I'm not sure if this is actually how it works in-game, but this one is just very, very awkward. So for an overall rating for this weapon, I would say that this one is D tier versus the bugs, and D tier versus the squids, but I would say it's probably like B tier versus the bots. This one's actually not bad for bots. It's a decent marksman's rifle. This one is a 3-round burst sniper rifle that you have to charge up. And it also has just 9 rounds in it that it consumes like 3 rounds every time you shoot it. It does have high damage per shot, which is nice. It's a little bit redundant for it to have that high damage though for so many enemies, since usually you one-shot like the bots with this if you hit them in the head. And it also has explosive rounds technically, although it doesn't really splash that much. And it does have medium armor pen on it, which again makes it nice towards the bots. The problem with this, though, is that it's just in a very, very awkward spot. The Marksman's Rifles I find to be just kind of better than this. Even some of the Assault Rifles, if you just set them to semi-auto, I find to be better than this rifle as well. And we've already talked about some other special weapons like the Eruptor that I just find to be a whole lot better as like a heavy sniper rifle. So this one, against bugs, it's just very awkward. The medium armor pen is kind of good for fighting certain enemies. It does kill the medium bugs quickly. Doesn't kill the heavy bugs super fast, just because of like the 3-round burst and the charge up of it just makes it kind of awkward to like fight chargers with this. You can if you want, and it's really bad against the small bugs since they can swarm you really quickly and you do have to wait for this thing to charge up and then shoot it. The charge isn't that long of a time to it, but still, like having 3 bursts and then that's it just does not feel good. Against the bots, this one is at its best, where you can kill the medium bots really fast with this, and the scope on it is nice. Even against bots though, I'd rather have weapons like the Diligence Counter Sniper or the Lever Action Rifle that also have medium armor pen. The Lever Action does almost as much damage as this per shot. It holds 8 rounds rather than the 9, but at least I don't need to charge it up and I can shoot it quite fast, as well as it's very accurate and I get more customizations with it. I just find that one to be better than something like this. And then against squids, since this one does have medium armor pen, it can actually hurt all the squids, but again, it just falls into that category of being really awkward. It doesn't really kill flesh mobs quickly. You can't really kill the voteless hordes that quickly with it. I mean, you can kill individual ones pretty fast, but with like the 3-round burst, it makes it pretty awkward. Against overseers, this one's actually decent, and against like the harvesters, you can actually hurt them with the accelerator rifle, so it still sort of has a role there. But at the same time, if I was going to go for that, why not just take like the anti-material rifle or the railgun, and then take like a different marksman's rifle like the counter sniper if I wanted something like that. That would probably just be better overall. And just like all the collab weapons, there is no customization for this. Up next, we have the ARC 12 Blitzer. This is the electric kind of shotgun. It was technically considered a shotgun at one point in time, but that wasn't really a great fit for it since it isn't really a shotgun, it just throws out lightning. For an overall rating for the Blitzer, I would say this one's S tier versus the bugs, and then C tier versus the bots, and B tier versus the squids. This one is really good against the bugs and then kind of awkward against the others. So this one does 250 damage per shot. It does have lightning damage on it and it can stun, as well as it does have medium armor pen and it does have infinite ammo. Those are all pretty cool things. This does take a little while to shoot in between shots, so you can't just like spam it out. You have to fire it and then your person has to kind of slowly pump it and then you can fire it again. That's fine. I don't really have a problem with that since you're getting a weapon with infinite ammo. I do find that a little bit awkward compared to some of the other shotguns, at least in terms of rate of fire, especially like the Punisher. I find it not as snappy as that one. But against the bugs, you can make a real argument that infinite ammo is a really big deal, and it is very good against them since so many of them have to be within melee range. And this can hurt pretty much all the bugs. You can kill all the medium and small bugs really fast with this. You can kill stalkers really quick with it. You can even kill chargers with it fairly quickly. So that's pretty nice. On the bot front, this one is just kind of awkward to get close to shoot with. It still does work quite well once you are within range, but since the bots like to stay so far away, it can be a little bit awkward. It also can technically work against like Hulks, but if you're going to do that, I think the arc thrower is just kind of better, and even then that's still kind of awkward. I'd rather have things like the spear gun or anti-material rifle or the railgun to kind of do that job. The squid missions, this one is still kind of awkward. It can work against the voteless pretty well. It works okay against flesh mobs until they're enraged, in which case then it's kind of awkward, and I'd rather have some of the other shotguns over it for that. And this one can beat up on overseers kind of consistently. Again, I'd still rather have some of the other like shotgun weapons. This isn't a shotgun, but I'd still rather have them over this. This isn't a bad weapon against them, and you could even potentially hurt harvesters with this. You usually don't want to get that close though, because then they can zap you. But if you're wearing like electricity armor, that could work. I don't know, the Blitzer is definitely specialized towards the bugs though. Like, it can be really good. And then for customizations for it, once again, you can only change sights about this one. So throw the iron sights on here because that gives you the best ergonomics, because I almost never like ADS with the Blitzer. There's not really a reason to. It just throws out lightning. It's very similar to like the arc thrower. You don't really need to be aiming down sights. You just are trying to arc it close enough to enemies so that it can hit them. Up next is the Las 5 Scythe. This one is pretty cool. This one comes in the free war bond. It'll probably be the first energy weapon you get, unless you went with some of the other war bonds that allow you to have others a little bit faster. But this one is a laser beam rifle where you just hold it on something until it dies, kind of like a magnifying glass. For an overall rating for the Scythe, I would say this one's probably B tier against the bugs, A tier against the bots, and then B tier against the squids. This one's not personally one of my favorite weapons, but it is actually pretty decent, especially with the upgrades, and it does actually get quite a few of them. So this one does 350 damage per second. It doesn't really have like damage per hit since you just hold it onto something. And if you can hold it onto a weak spot, which this thing has no recoil, so that's very easy to do, you can kill them very quickly. As well as this weapon does have infinite ammo as well, so long as you don't overheat it. If you do overheat it, then you will have to change out the heat sinks for it. And that's not a big deal, especially with some of the upgrades that you can get for it. This does only have light armor pen though, which does make it so it's a little bit awkward against certain enemy types, but usually not that bad. Against bugs, this one can be pretty good, but since they can swarm you so quickly, it's a little bit awkward. At range, this one is really good. You can kill all the medium and the small bugs really easy. Against the bots, this one is really good, because you can kill any of the medium bots extremely fast with it. You just hold it on their head and you'll kill them. You can be shooting all the way across the map and be killing stuff with it. That is really cool. It doesn't kill as fast as some other rifles, which is why I don't put it quite up to S tier. I think the Marksmen Rifles can kind of kill those bots a little bit faster, and certain other weapons like Dominator I find a little bit like more forgiving for fighting the bots. But this one can still kill them very quickly. You can kill the small bots super easy too. Against big bots, you can't really do much to them, but that's why you bring different weapons in. And then against the squids, once again, this one's actually pretty good. You can kill the voteless pretty fast. You can kill flesh mobs, especially at a distance, fairly quick with this one. It's not the fastest, but it's not bad. And it's okay against overseers too, because you can just kind of hold this on their head. If they're flying around, it can be a little bit more difficult to just hold this on them. But you can still kill them, and this can also light enemies on fire. I forgot to talk about that too. This one does have a decent amount of customization. For the ones I'd recommend, I like the 1.5 times tube for the sights on this, but any sight, whichever sight you like the most, I just like being able to use this at somewhat range. This would actually be a really cool weapon if it got like the 10 times scope. I would probably put that on here, because I can see that actually being really good on bot missions and just lasering things quite a ways away. For the underbarrel, I'd recommend the angled foregrip. That'll just give you better ergonomics, so you can just move it from target to target quicker. This doesn't have any recoil. And then for the magazine, I really like the high capacity heatsink. That makes it so it takes a very long time for this to overheat. So you can just hold this on enemies for quite a while, and if you do overheat it, you can swap to your secondary and then reload this when you have time. That way you can keep fighting. If you're not overheating this, then the high capacity heatsink doesn't really come with any downside other than the ergonomic drop a little bit. But that's a trade-off that I'm willing to make just so that I can hold this onto enemies a little bit longer than I would otherwise. Up next is the Las 16 Sickle. This weapon is pretty cool. This weapon has been one of my favorites ever since it came out. So this one is pretty much a laser assault rifle. This one also has infinite ammo, so long as you don't overheat it. Otherwise, you will have to change out the heatsink. Comes with 3 heat sinks. Unless you're running like the siege ready armor, then I believe you get 4 of them. And this one has light armor pen, and it makes for actually a really good like general purpose assault rifle. This one I would just say is A tier across the board. It is very nice. This one doesn't do the most damage out of any of the assault rifles, doing only 55, but it does have a high rate of fire, and it is super accurate. This has pretty much no recoil to it. It's very easy to keep on target, and if you're not overheating this, then this is essentially an infinite ammo assault rifle. Again, is it as strong as some of the other assault rifles? No, but it can light things on fire, which is pretty cool if you shoot them enough. Not as good as like the Coyote is right now. Coyote's definitely the best assault rifle by far. But this one is still very, very capable. Like, you can clear up just about anything. Against the bugs, it kills all the small and medium bugs relatively fast, especially the small bugs. It's really good for that. It's really good for shooting shriekers out of the air, too. The big bugs, this one's not going to do a whole lot to them. It's not really the best to be shooting like chargers with, but again, you bring special weapons and stuff like that for it. Not a big deal. Against the bots, since it is so accurate, it's very easy to hit the medium bots in the head. Against the small bots, you can just spray them wherever. Bigger bots, you're going to need special weapons once again. And then against the squids, this can rip right through the hordes of the voteless. You can kill like the flesh mobs pretty quickly with this, and you can kill things like the overseers pretty quick with it. It doesn't really do anything against the harvesters or like stingrays or anything, but that's okay. Once again, you just take like a special weapon that can kind of deal with all those things. The laser sickle, I have no complaints with whatsoever. I think it's probably one of the most balanced weapons in the game, or one of the best balanced weapons in the game, where it has just felt consistently good ever since it came out, and like I really like it. For customizations, the only thing you can change once again is sights. Personally, I like the Reflex Mark II sight on here, but the 1.5 times tube is really good. Iron sights do give you the most ergonomics, but this one already has high ergonomics, so it's really your choice with this weapon. Pick whichever sight you like the most. And then our next weapon is the double-edged sickle. If you like the regular sickle, I think you're going to like this one even more. Or maybe you'll hate this one even more. It really depends. This weapon is really cool. So this weapon is basically the same as the sickle, but it has the ability to keep overheating and doing more damage and cutting through more armor. This one for an overall rating, I would say is S tier versus the bugs, S tier versus the bots, and then probably A tier versus the squids. I find it a little bit less useful against the squids because I don't always need like heavy armor pen from this. But this does have basically the same stats as the regular sickle does. Just once it starts heating up, it then goes from light armor pen to medium armor pen up to heavy armor pen, and it does do more damage. And then it also lights you on fire, which actually isn't that big of a deal, because if you have like fireproof armor, especially like the heavy salamander armor, you can burn for quite a while, and that's not such a big deal. You pretty much become a screaming LMG with this, because it can put down a lot of suppressing fire really quickly. It is still very accurate. It still clears through just about everything, but this makes it so you can clear up like medium and heavy enemies even better than you could with the sickle. Against squids, I still find it's kind of the same. Like, yeah, you can now hurt harvesters with this, and you could shoot things like stingrays out of the air with it, which does give it more utility, but then lighting myself on fire more often against the squids sometimes gets me in trouble with like the voteless and sometimes the flesh mobs. I find that I'm a little bit safer like running around with the sickle, so that's why I give these like the same rating. I don't really find myself like really finding one of these better than the other in a lot of situations against the squids. Oh, also you can take the health booster with this one, and the health booster makes it so that the fire damage is rolled down to a lower number, so you can burn even longer with that, which is really good. Also, just crouching down can make it so you can put yourself out from this, which is good. Keep that in mind. And then also it's a bigger bonus if you have somebody with the stim pistol, especially if they're rocking medic armor, and just stimming you with that, because you can then just sit there and fight just about anything. Like the double-edged sickle is actually really fun if you have a teammate doing that, so long as they're not getting knocked around. For the overall attachments though, this one is totally your choice. Pick whichever one you like. I like the 1.5 times tube for this, but if you like the reflex sight or you like the iron sights for the better ergonomics, go for it. Like I said, this one's pretty much the same as the sickle in terms of like overall everything, besides the fact that you can just overheat it more. So whatever you like on that will work just fine on the double-edged sickle. Then we move over to the Plas 1 Scorcher. The Plas 1 Scorcher I would consider one of the best weapons in the game, and again, one of the best balanced weapons in the game. This one also comes in the free war bond, and this is the only plasma weapon that's actually in the free war bond. This one is really good. It's always been really good. This one for an overall rating, I would say is A tier across the board. The only reason I wouldn't say the Scorcher is S tier is because you can run through ammo with it pretty fast. That's its one and only downside. But if you're getting resupplies regularly, if you bring the resupply backpack, then yeah, you can say this one's S tier because you don't have to worry about ammo then. If you're finding a bunch of ammo boxes around the map, or if somebody else is bringing the resupply and they're just giving resupplies to everybody, the Scorcher becomes incredibly strong. This does really good damage per shot, really good damage per second, holds 20 rounds. It has medium armor pen as well as explosive rounds on it, like pretty much all the plasma weapons do. It's pretty much just a plasma assault rifle. This one wasn't always fully automatic, but I do like that they buffed it to be fully automatic. That is pretty cool. And the rate of fire is good. This one works pretty well against everything. Like, you can kill the bugs really fast, you can kill the bots really quick, you can kill the squids really quick. Doesn't really matter what you're fighting, unless you're fighting like really big enemies, like it's not going to kill titans and tanks really fast. but against any of the small and medium enemies, it will kill them incredibly quick. Really cool weapon though, and I do like it better with like the Siege Ready armor, just so that I can get that extra magazine. Like if Arrowhead ever decided to buff the Scorcher and give it like 2 more magazines, I would say it would be an easy S tier across the board for everything. It's really good. The only problem is running through ammo a little bit quickly. It also has a lot of customizations, which is pretty cool too, at least compared to some of these weapons. Me personally, I like once again going with the reflex sight, but you could go with the iron sights if you want better ergonomics. The Scorcher already has really good ergonomics, so just really pick whichever sight you like the most. I mean, it already starts out with the 1.5 times, which is really good too. And then I like going with the angled foregrip, once again just for the better ergonomics. I don't find that I really need the vertical on this because it doesn't shoot so fast that it becomes kind of uncontrollable. And then our very last energy weapon is probably our strongest energy weapon and one of the strongest weapons in the game overall, I'd say. Up next, we have the Plas 101 Purifier. This is a plasma rifle similar to the Scorcher, but it's only semi-auto. Or you can charge it up and then have it be basically an explosive sniper. And it charges fairly fast too. So for an overall rating for the Plasma Purifier, I would say this one's S tier across the board. I think the Purifier is one of the best weapons in the game against everything. I don't think this has a bad matchup against anything, because you can still shoot this as a semi-auto rifle when things get close and do pretty good damage with it and kill things pretty fast. You still have 15 rounds in this. It barely has any recoil, it barely has any spread, and then if you're allowed to, you can just charge this up and then kill pretty much anything with it. Like the charge shot does really well even against the big enemies. So the Purifier has 500 damage per shot. That's, I believe, with the fully charged shot. That's not with the semi-auto shots. This one also has explosive rounds and medium armor pen on it, which is really good. And the explosive rounds also splash more the more you charge this up. There was a time where the Purifier was arguably the worst weapon that was ever added to Helldivers, because when it first came out, it was pretty weak. It was a sniper rifle that didn't really do much. The semi-auto in it did almost no damage to anything. Charging it up kind of did more, but it still didn't do that much. And then they pretty much like mega buffed it to where it became like one of the best weapons in the game. And that's really cool. On the bug front, you can kill pretty much any of the small and medium bugs with a charge shot. You actually can, and you can splash it to multiple bugs, so you can kill a lot with that. All the medium bots get bullied around by this thing with charge shots, and since you're usually fighting at a distance, it's really easy to charge this up and just keep hitting them. It's kind of like a mini railgun in that way. You can even shoot out like the gunships with this if you hit them twice in the engine with it, which is kind of insane because the only other weapon that really does that consistently is like the Eruptor, but that one has a slow rate of fire. This one doesn't even have a slow rate of fire, so it's still good in that regard. You can even fight the big bots with this if you want to. Against the squids, you can completely destroy flesh mobs with this. This is really strong against flesh mobs. It's really strong against the Voteless too, with the charged up shots or just with the regular semi-auto shots. Charged shots also just bully around any of the Overseers too, so you can take them out. You can fight like the Stingrays, or you can fight the Harvesters with this really easily too. You don't really need any other weapon other than the Purifier against the squids. This one does kind of everything. And yeah, it's just a very, very solid weapon. For customizations, it also gets a lot of good customizations, weirdly enough. You think that would be like the downside of this. For me personally, I like going with the 1.5 times tube for this that it starts out with. I find that to be the best because sometimes I do want to be using this at longer range. But again, if you want the best ergonomics, you could go with the iron sights. And then usually I go with the angled foregrip because most of the time I'm using the charged up shots. I'm not shooting this really quickly in semi-auto. If you are, then maybe you want to go with like the vertical foregrip. That can help too. Let's begin with the very first weapon, which is the CB9 explosive crossbow. This one is a really cool weapon. So this one comes in the Democratic Detonation War Bond, and it is arguably one of the strongest primary weapons in the game. It can kind of do just about everything, which is really cool. So this one does 620 damage per shot, which is a lot of damage. That damage is split between both the actual like ballistic damage of the crossbow bolt hitting, which is pretty high, and then the explosive. And the explosive does have an explosion radius, so it does have damage drop off after a certain distance, which is kind of nice. You can hit multiple things. Holds 5 shots, has no recoil, has a fairly fast rate of fire for a crossbow. Kind of a longer reload since you have to reload this one fairly often. Not so bad if you want to take like Siege Ready armor though. It's not really necessary for the overall amount of bolts that you get. You get quite a few of them, but just like the fast reload speed is pretty cool. This one does have medium armor pen on it, it does have explosive damage on it, and it also is a one-handed weapon which you can use with a shield. which does actually make the crossbow pretty good. It kind of excels at just about everything, because against single targets, it can do a lot to them. It can hurt most enemies that you want your primary weapon to hurt. It can clear up crowds to some extent, so long as they're somewhat tightly packed. It doesn't have a huge explosion radius, and it does make it so this one is pretty versatile. It can also close up bug tunnels and blow up bot factories, as well as illuminate ships. All of those things are really, really nice for this. For an overall rating for crossbow, I'd say this one's S tier versus bugs and bots, and A tier versus squids. The only reason I don't put this into S tier versus squids as well is that I don't find it to be as necessary. I think that the extra that this one gives is really nice on the bot and the bug front, since you can close up the different like tunnels and bot factories. There's usually not a whole ton of illuminate ships that you need to blow up, and they're fairly easy to blow up, so I don't really find that the crossbow is necessary, although it can do it too, so that is pretty nice. This does work really well against any of the small and medium bugs, so long as they're not directly on top of you. That is a downside to the explosive weapons inherently. So at range, then it's perfectly fine. It can hurt and kill any of the medium bugs really fast. It can hurt the big bugs pretty well too. Like, you can use this to kill titans and chargers if you really want to. It's not necessarily the best for that role, but it can definitely work there. Against bots, this can bully any of the medium bots. It can even hurt the big bots as well. Any of the small bots, this one can kill super easily, and they don't engage at like super close range most of the time unless they're the berserkers. Sometimes the smaller bots do too, but you can usually make enough distance to shoot the crossbow at them as well, or swap to your secondary. And against the illuminate, this one's also pretty good. You can one-shot the overseers, which is really nice if you hit them in the head. You can body tap them pretty fast with this too, even if they have their shield up. It doesn't really matter. You can just hit that directly. Same thing goes with the bots. You can kill flesh mobs really fast with this too. Like, the crossbow just kind of does everything, and it's really good at its job. For customizations is kind of where the crossbow doesn't really have any options, because the only thing you can change about it is sights. And arguably, it starts out with the best sight with the 1.5 times red dot on there. If you like the reflex or the holographic sight, though, throw that one on, but that's the only thing you're changing aside from the pattern. Our second gun is the R36 Eruptor. This is the big old anti-tank rifle. This one is also available in Democratic Detonations War Bond, and this is available on the second page, I believe. This one is a big old bolt-action rifle that fires out explosive rounds that do go a certain distance. I believe it's 300 meters at max, and then they explode. Or unless they hit something directly, then they will explode as well. The explosion throws out shrapnel that can hit multiple enemies in the area, which is really good. This weapon is one of the very few primary weapons as well that has heavy armor pen on it, meaning that you can hurt basically everything, or just about everything, with the Eruptor, which is really, really nice. Holds 5 rounds in it. It does have a slow bolt. This is not fast. Even after they've buffed it a couple of times, the bolt is still pretty slow on it, and it does have pretty bad ergonomics when you're moving it around. Luckily, you can customize that, though. For an overall rating for the Eruptor, I would say this one's A tier against bugs, S tier against bots, and S tier against squids. This one is super nice for most enemies. I find it a little bit awkward against the bugs, but not even that awkward. It can still clear up crowds really well, and if you're only fighting at distance, it's very, very good, because this can hurt basically all the bugs. You can, again, kill chargers and titans with this. You can one-hit most of the bugs with this. You can actually get quite a few collaterals thanks to the explosive damage for clearing up crowds. It's just that it can be kind of a pain if enemies are getting close to you routinely. Then you're going to be fighting mostly with like your secondary or special weapon. You could take something like the Stalwart machine gun to really offset that, to where the Eruptor becomes really, really good against everything, since then you don't have to worry about things getting close. On the bot front, it's basically the same type of deal that it is with crossbow. Really good for engaging at a distance, can hurt basically anything. You can kill hulks with this if you'd like, or tanks with this. You can close up the bot factories and the bug tunnels and the illuminate ships with it. And I do like this one a little bit more for the illuminate, specifically for the flesh mobs, because I find that it kills them a little bit more effective than like the crossbow. It is very, very strong at taking out flesh mobs. You can kill them with just a couple shots from this. So really good weapon. For the customizations for this, I'd highly recommend that you go with the iron sights and you go with the angled foregrip on this. The iron sights and the angled foregrip give you the best ergonomics for this, which is still not way great, but that does make it so it's not as slow to transition from target to target, which is really good, because that is like the only real problem that the Eruptor has, I guess, besides the slow rate of fire, but it kind of needs that to be more balanced with how it actually works. If you don't like that, or if you don't have these things unlocked yet for the Eruptor and you find it still kind of awkward, try going with the peak physique armor. That one helps a lot too, because that one gives you a lot better ergonomics with your weapons. So you can actually stack all of these, and then the Eruptor does feel pretty fast, but at that point it feels a little bit unnecessary. If I'm running peak physique, I'd rather have this have like a scope on it so that I can just shoot it at longer range, and then the foregrip doesn't really matter. Very solid weapon though. It's one of the few weapons that I actually have maxed out in Helldivers. And speaking of one of the few weapons that I have maxed out in Helldivers, up next we have the VG70 variable. This weapon is weird. This is actually the very first weapon I ever maxed out in Helldivers, funny enough. Because I was really close with quite a few weapons like the Eruptor, the Reprimand, and then like the Variable came out and I just really enjoyed using it, so I just used it like crazy. This is a volley gun and it has the most customization kind of in-game out of any of the primary weapons, since you can change the rate of fire with this as well as the firing mode with this, and then also potentially the scope if you have a scope on this. So you got a lot of options there, which is very unusual for a primary weapon. So this one kind of acts as a shotgun, a machine gun, and also just sort of an everything gun, like you're allowed to fire out everything. This one does 85 damage per shot, has light armor pen, holds 49 rounds in it, and it does have very little recoil. At least if you're firing it in the machine gun mode. You have more in the shotgun mode and more in the volley mode. If you want to swap it to the shotgun mode, it will fire out 7 rounds from this. And then it's basically a 7-shot semi-automatic shotgun that has light armor pen on it that does do more damage than something like the Punisher, not quite as much as the Halo shotgun, so it kind of fits in that role, which is still pretty good. It's also fairly accurate at very long ranges too. And then the last mode is you swap it to the volley fire, you fire out everything, and if you're below half the total amount of ammo, this won't knock you back, but if you are standing up and you fire at everything, it will knock you back. This can be pretty funny for actually flinging yourself, especially if you want to do it with like the jump pack. So that's really cool. For an overall rating for the variable, I would give this one an A tier against everything, against bugs, squids, bots. It's super versatile, which is really nice, and it does work pretty well as like a general purpose machine gun for fighting most of those. You can mow down all the small bugs and the medium bugs with the machine gun, or the shotgun, depending on which one you like. The volley fire can be really useful on the bugs too, because you can instantly pop like a Titan's stomach, which is great, or instantly pop the back end of a charger if you want to do that. That is kind of cool, and if you're laying prone, then that's not going to be an issue, so you won't get knocked down. That's the other way you can avoid getting knocked down too. Against bots, again, as the machine gun, it works perfectly fine. It's pretty accurate, and it doesn't have much recoil, so it's pretty easy to hit the medium bots in the head and kill the smaller bots. And again, if you swap it to the volley fire, you can completely destroy the back part of a Hulk with this, which is really nice, or a tank. You can actually kill quite a few things with the variable, surprisingly fast. And then against the squids, you can just use this to kind of spray at like flesh mobs or spray at really anything. It can kill like the overseers or the voteless pretty fast. The variable is just pretty solid. It works pretty well against everything and is one of my favorite weapons. For customizations, I actually didn't really customize this much, and the only thing you really can customize is the optics. It already has the 2x tube on there, which is pretty good. You could go with the 1.5x tube. I like the reflex sight Mark II on here, but this one is really your choice. Pick whichever sight you would like. There's some that slightly change the ergonomics of it, but that's it. It's a very fun weapon though. If you haven't tried it, I'd recommend it. It is very much a love it or hate it weapon though. Next we have the Torturer. This is the flamethrower primary, and this one is kind of cool too. This one comes with the Fire War bond. This one did get buffed not too long ago to where it has more overall fuel, I guess per burst of it. It still has the same overall tanks and everything, but the burn time has been improved quite a bit. This one does 380 damage a second. This one does have pretty much heavy armor pen because of the way fire works on it, which is really nice. And it's just a flamethrower. It doesn't have as much fuel and it doesn't do as much damage as the special flamethrower, but it does more than like the secondary flamethrower. For an overall rating, I would say this one's probably S tier against the bugs, C tier against the bots, and like A tier against the squids. This one can still be really good. This one is pretty nice. It does do a lot of damage per second and it's very good at close range. Obviously, you want to be wearing like fireproof armor when you're using this, otherwise you're going to have a lot of problems. It can kill you pretty fast like any of the fire weapons can. It does kill any of like the swarm type enemies, especially bugs. You can melt through basically everything with this. If you want to fight titans with this, you absolutely can. It also kills chargers pretty fast and it kills the hordes of bugs really quick. Against the bots, this is a harder sell. It's more difficult to get in close with the bots, although it can melt them pretty fast too. But I don't really like having my primary for this. It's the same reason why I don't really like the secondary for fighting bots either. It's just kind of awkward in my opinion. And then for fighting squids, this one's pretty good too. You can kill the voteless really fast. You can kill overseers pretty quick, so long as they don't like knock you down in the fire. That can be kind of annoying, otherwise you both might die. And it can kill flesh mobs really fast too. And then for customizations, there is no customization for this weapon. This is one of the 2 weapons that's not related to a collab that doesn't actually get any modifications, which I think is kind of a missed opportunity for this, because I would like to see this one get different muzzle attachments to make the flames do different things, or you could always do canister size or just add different stocks or something to this. I think that'd be kind of cool, and I'm kind of hoping for that in the future, but right now all we've got is just skins on the Torture. And then our very last special weapon is the Jar 5 Dominator. This comes in the Steel Veterans War Bond. This one is the big old bolter gun, which is pretty cool. I really like this one. This is a big semi-automatic rifle that fires out jet-fueled ammo, pretty much. It's like gyro jets that do have travel time on them. and it does have medium armor pen, which is pretty cool. This one does 275 damage per shot, which is really good. This used to actually be higher when they buffed this thing, because it was kind of weak. Then they kind of over buffed it and then kind of rolled it back a little bit, because it was like, yeah, it probably shouldn't be that strong, which is probably for the best. This holds 15 rounds in it, doesn't have too much recoil, and it does have a pretty high rate of fire. This is basically the same thing as the Slugger that we talked about in the shotgun video. It's almost the same. They're pretty much identical in terms of damage and about the same in capacity. The only real difference is that this one is semi-automatic with the full magazine reload, as opposed to the Slugger, which was pump action and you could reload it 1 round at a time. I do think that the Dominator is slightly better than the Slugger, but not by that much. They're both pretty comparable to one another in my opinion. For an overall rating for the Dominator, I would say this one's A tier against bugs and A tier against squids, and then S tier against bots. This one is really, really strong in the bot missions, and it can be pretty strong in the other 2 missions too. Like fighting the bugs, this one does put down any of the small and medium bugs really fast. It can be a little bit awkward at longer ranges, just because like there's the travel time and bugs are sometimes erratic when they move, especially for like shriekers. This one can be kind of iffy to be shooting at them. It does kill them if you hit them, so that's pretty nice. And this one's really good against any of the medium bugs, can kill the big bugs actually pretty fast too if you're allowed to hit their weak spots. It kills bots very fast, especially any of the medium bots. You can bully them with this pretty well, which is nice. And for the squids, also pretty strong. You can like head pop the overseers with this. You can kill the voteless with body taps with this. It's okay against the flesh mobs, and you can kill the harvesters with this too. So it's got a lot going for it. It's a really good gun. The only thing I don't really like about the Jar 5 Dominator is if somebody else has it and they're shooting it near you, because for some reason it makes your screen shake too, which is kind of weird. I don't really like that. I wish they would kind of change that, since the Slugger doesn't have that issue. Then for optics, I really like the Reflex Sight Mark II. That one's my favorite for a weapon like this. You can put on the iron sights if you want better ergonomics with this, but I find them to be a little bit awkward with this weapon, so usually I just stick with the Mark II, because I will ADS with this weapon pretty often. I'm not hip firing it a lot. If you find yourself hip firing this a bunch, then like the iron sights are probably better just for the better ergonomics. And then for the underbarrel attachment, I like the angled grip with this just to up its ergonomics as well, because this one does, again, kind of have a slow transition time. Once again, if you don't have these unlocked, or if you don't really find that they're entirely necessary but you still want that bonus, try out the Peak Physique Armor. That does help quite a bit. And that'll do it for all the explosive and the special weapons. Not a whole lot to talk about here. Generally speaking, they're all pretty good in one way or another. Most of the weapons in Helldivers are quite good though. Hey, you made it to the very end of the video. So this is where I would put all of the primary weapons in Helldivers versus each of the factions, versus the bugs, the squids, and the bots. And overall, I would say pretty much all the weapons in Helldivers can be really useful. Now you might be thinking, why don't you have very many weapons in the C tier or the D tier, Ron, and why isn't there an F tier? Well, I don't think that there is really any F tier weapons in Helldivers right now. I feel like they're all fine at the very least. Sometimes a few of them can be pretty awkward versus certain factions, but they can shine in other ways too. And you do have a full loadout to kind of consider, so going with something that's a primary weapon that is very specialized, you could take a secondary or a special weapon that just kind of makes them work a little bit better. Same thing goes with really all the weapons. The D tier weapon, I think I only have one in there right now, is kind of awkward in certain situations, but again, on certain builds and especially on the bots, it can be fine. And then the C tier weapons I think are okay. Most of the weapons I would put in Helldivers in either a B or an A tier, with a couple of them being S tier that are clearly stronger than the others, or clearly strong against one particular faction. And once again, this is all completely my opinion, so if you disagree with this, then that's perfectly fine. We also have more weapons upcoming, I'm sure of that, whenever we get another war bond. In the meantime, I will be doing support weapons fairly soon, hopefully, to put them up in a list like this too. Thank you guys so very much for watching this. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye, everybody!